Hey guys, Pastor Marc here, once again to talk about the issues that are going on beyond the pews. There's things in our society, as much as we love to spend the time in theological discussion and Bible study and that sort of thing, there's more going on in the world that we need to look at, be aware of, talk about, think about. And so the things that I have been hearing, seeing comments on Facebook and things from some of y'all, conversations before and after service or in the parking lot, that sort of thing. Here are some things that I've noticed you are concerned about, and if you're not thinking about it, maybe you need to be. One thing that's interesting that popped up that probably would have just been a blip on my radar, but I've heard several people mention it, is this, the claim is that America is about to hand over our sovereignty to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization is associated with the United Nations. We are founding members of both. The World Health Organization tends to monitor and help with health problems and issues around the world. We're already members of this. It's not something new we're doing. The thing is that there's amendments that are being proposed to the Constitution of the WHO, the World Health Organization. And these would make some minor changes that could have significant impact on what an international outside organization could do or have influence on within the United States. So in that regard, we are in that sense, handing over some sovereignty because, if we're just going to allow them to walk in and dictate how we do things in our nation, that is handing over sovereignty. The big issues center on the declaration of and monitoring for health emergencies, right? So after COVID, everybody's, freaking out. What do we do if something like this happens again? And, we can't sit around and wait for things to get, debated, whatever. We need to act, and we need to be able to act in unity to solve these problems. That's kind of the mindset going on. And so what it would do, it would expand the WHO's ability to monitor health issues within member nations, which means there would be an increased information flowing out of America about Americans to an international body. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's understandable. But that would be one thing, is the surveillance, the monitoring. The other thing would be that at present, the way the wording is in the WHO Constitution is that in order for there to be a declared emergency and action taken, it actually requires the admission and consent of the member nation. So if the WHO says, hey, America, we think that you got a crisis going on there, and America looks and goes, no, we're good. It's not a crisis. WHO has no power. They're looking at changing that to where it doesn't actually have to be the consent, where the WHO can just take action. And I imagine well-intended people pushing this are probably thinking, well, something like COVID comes along again, we got to be able to act quick, right? Don't have all the wheels of bureaucracy internally gumming things up. We got to be able to jump in there and solve the problem. Okay, let's assume you're well-intended, but that's handing over power outside of the country to other organizations. So that one's kind of scary. The other one is that the WHO would now have the authority, the ability to impose sanctions. So let's say they declare an emergency, and the country they declare emergency in goes, no, there's a problem, but it's not an emergency, we're fine. And they refuse WHO help and intervention. The WHO can now, or will be able to, if this stuff passes, be able to use the influence of its other member nations to impose penalty on the country who's not allowing them to help. So I understand all that concern, right? Because decisions like this are best made local level, right? The more decentralized power in the government is, the better off the people are. As you have your central of authority being local, that protects the rights, that actually helps promote more prosperity and all that sort of stuff. So I understand all the concern. I mean, it's bad enough that we ship off all of our authority and things to, Austin or Washington. Now we want to ship it off to another organization outside of the country. I understand why there would be concerns. Here's some things to think about, though. Participation in membership in the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization is not a governing body. Maybe this is trying to turn it into a little bit of one, but it is not a governing body. So there's that. Membership and participation in it is a voluntary association. This is not something that was adopted by treaty by the U.S. Senate. The World Health Organization was formed in, I believe it was 1948, and America, the U.S., were one of the founding members, but that was okayed by a joint resolution of Congress. That's not the same thing as a treaty. Treaties that are binding, that you must do this, those have to be approved by the Senate. That's not what was done here. So this is not a binding deal. Any future president can, or Congress even, can say, you know what, we're out of here. We're not doing this anymore. And so, I mean, Trump was about to do that right before the election, and then the Biden administration reversed that. So while these things are concerning, at any time, the U.S. can pull the plug and say, time out, we're not playing that. There may be diplomatic or economic consequences and repercussions for doing that, but it's not like an automatic giving away of power. Maybe a step in that direction that might be concerning, but we're not there. It's not a, the big, conspiracy, oh no, the WHO is taking over America, that some people are making it out to be. But it is something to, raise a red flag and go, oh, time out. What are you doing? This country rules this country. Other places and people don't rule the country. So we're of the people, for the people, and by the people of America. The citizens here, we're the ones that rule it. So there's that. So understand the concern. However, while this is something to be concerned about, at least to be aware of and pay attention to, one thing that has become increasingly clear, whatever America may have once been, whatever influence may have once been there of Christianity upon our nation, and then our influence in the world beyond that, America is not now today, whatever we may want to argue about the founding, America is not now today a Christian nation. During the last two elections, everybody, hollering and screaming and debating about what kind of person a Christian needs to support and advocate for and, vote for in an election. That's all well and good if you're in a Christian nation and you're talking about Christian people. Of course, we would all love to have a wonderful, God-honoring, Christ-following disciple in positions of power. I think what we need to do is start getting into more of a mindset of the fact that we're like the Jews in Babylon. Okay, we are not, comparable to the Israelites under King David and Solomon in the glory days, right? We're not the Israelites coming out of Egypt following Moses. This isn't what's going on. We're more akin to, if you're looking for a biblical example, of the Jews in exile in Babylon, where they are told to work for the good of the city in which you dwell. Yeah, but the city in which they dwell, it's a pagan city. There's non-believers all around them in a non-believing culture, and the people that they're supposed to be working for the good of, the betterment of, there's going to be ungodly politicians. There's going to be ungodly officials. There's going to be, it's the reality they were in, but yet God said to dwell there and to work for the good of the city, of the place you're in. We are in an unbelieving culture with unbelieving officials and politicians, but yet we do what we can to stay faithful to God and follow Christ, understanding that that's not what the world's doing. And so in that same idea, as this happens with the World Health Organization, we may, because we see the direction that's going. However, hey, fallen, corrupt, sinful human beings are going to do what fallen, corrupt, sinful human beings do. That's not going to change until Jesus makes all things new. Okay. The second thing that I think we need to be aware of, again, as I said all throughout the pandemic, be careful, not fearful. With what's going on in recent times with the food and gas issues, food prices are not only going up, but part of the reason prices are going up is because supplies are going down. There's shortages of all sorts of things all around the world. We have lived in a period of unprecedented abundance for most of my life. And that may, come back. It may not. Either way, we need to look at and be aware of what's going on. During the pandemic, all kinds of supply issues were disrupted. Well, you don't just flip a switch and turn that stuff back on. So whenever you had ranchers that had to slaughter herds because they couldn't get the feed to feed their herds, whenever you had dairy farmers dumping out thousands of gallons of milk because no one was buying, because restaurants were shut down, all this kind of stuff going on, that doesn't just come back. That takes time. And so while we were recovering from that, all of a sudden, here comes the Russia-Ukraine war. Well, Russia and Ukraine combined are about 29-30% of the global wheat supply. So there's that. Now that's disrupted. Almost a third of the world's wheat supply has been disrupted. On top of that, Russia is like the #1 exporter of fertilizer. So you have places where farmers are needing to plant their crops and all this kind of stuff. Well, they don't have the fertilizer for it. So they're not able to produce as much. And so that's going to affect it. Now what you have going on, just recently, India announced no exports. What's happening is countries are looking at the shortages and they're going, we're going to hold on to what we have and keep it for our people. And so that is just kind of making things worse. And so whereas before we kind of could have spread it around maybe a little and be a little thin here and there, but now people are starting to clamp down. And so globally, that's having an impact on wheat supply. And it's not just wheat. I mean, there's all sorts of other crops. There's all kinds of other little side things that we don't even think about. And then again, fertilizer on top of that. So my point here being is not just to freak you out over, food. Most of the folks here at Liberty Hill, we're a rural church. A lot of y'all already live at least a partially self-sustaining lifestyle. So just continue doing what you're doing. If you need to do more, do more. Have a garden, right? If you have an abundant garden harvest and more than you can eat, share with those around you. This is a time when communities need to come together. Like I said before, we've had this amazing period of abundance. And it's allowed people to be isolated, right? To forget that no man is an island. But we need one another. And this is one of the reasons we need one another. Remember the Bible, it says that we need to ask God to give us our daily bread. Because for so much of the world, throughout most of history, except for a small amount of people in a small amount of time, just figuring out what you're going to eat was the norm. And the reason why we need to bear one another's burdens, have a community, be a part of your local church, be a part of whatever community you need to, that we can be there for one another. And so with that going on, with the food shortage and the gas prices, and it's not just gas prices, but it's also gas shortages. Because again, supplies and all that was disrupted because of the lockdowns and the overreactions to the pandemic. And so you have all of that hysteria that went on that shut down oil production. And as they were trying to ramp that back up, you have a new administration coming in, changing all the rules around. Well, markets don't like uncertainty, so that messes things up. And then you have the war in Russia that goes on, which Russia is a massive exporter of oil. That's one of the driving things about the war. And now there's all the sanctions on Russia. And there's just so many little things that have been disrupting supply. There actually is concern over a diesel. Well, first of all, diesel prices are skyrocketing, which, the ships that bring us stuff, they run on diesel. The trains that ship things across our country, they run on diesel. The trucks that deliver things to the stores, they run on diesel. Diesel prices go up, everything else goes up. So that's just going to be a little more concern. There could be outright shortages. There could be disruptions in supply, where it's like that farmer that, is able to plant, was able to get fertilizer. What if he doesn't have diesel to run his tractors to harvest? So there's all kinds of things that are going on that are very, very concerning. But again, the thing to do in times like this are to come together, be there for one another, be wise, be prudent, be careful, not fearful. Go read the book of Proverbs. You want some wisdom, you want some prudence, you want some ideas of, hey, how do I deal with things in rough times, the kind of mindset you need to have. Go read the book of Proverbs. It's a great book full of wisdom. And so that's just some things that are going on that I know it seems kind of doom and gloom, but I think we need to be thinking about, be aware of, be planning for, because if we stick our head in the sand and we just think, this is going to pass, well, hard times are probably ahead of us, and we need to be ready for them, for ourselves, and then ability to help and care for one another. Okay, it is not all doom and gloom. It is not all bad news. So, as much as things seem down, there is a ton of good news that is going on. First off, Roe versus Wade, as we've talked about before, may be getting overturned. It's looking very, very likely. Any day now, they may actually issue an earlier ruling than was intended, but it looks like Roe versus Wade will be overturned. Yay, go good guys. So that's amazing. Praise God. You have the Biden administration's Ministry of Truth, kind of Orwellian, really creepy 1984 style governance disinformation board is gone fizzle. It landed with a resounding plop. Nobody wanted this thing. The more people found out about it, learned about it, they said, no, thank you. And so that has gone nowhere. The person who was supposed to be in charge of it's kind of, okay, we'll find something else for her to do because no one trusted her. So praise God, that has gone. So awesome there. You have, what was it? With the Elon and Twitter thing. Twitter seems to have basically been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, that they've inflated their numbers of users. So there's actually, looks like there was probably some fraud going on. And see, one of the big deals is the power that big tech has had, that the social media has had to manipulate the information that people receive, is partly because of all this money and market power that they hold. Well, it looks like maybe Twitter had some of that market power because they were lying about their actual users and that sort of thing. So that's kind of cool. Bad guys getting caught there. There's a lot of conservative, kind of non-establishment, we're tired of the way things have been, sort of people who have been winning primaries. So, and it's looking like there's going to be a, wave in November where the establishment, the current kind of powers that be in the way of doing things, is going to get the boot. And so stuff will be able to start to get turned around. So awesome there. You have corporations showing that the maxim go woke, get woke, go broke. Yeah, say that right. Get woke, go broke is proving to be true. Whenever corporations and businesses start to just really start pushing that woke, transgender, CRT sort of ideology, people don't want to do with it. And you're starting to see, Disney losing billions over there inserting themselves into the Florida parental rights bill debate. A lot of people have been bailing. They said, well, forget that. If you want schools teaching kids about, all of that, little kids teaching about inappropriate sexual stuff to kids, well, then we're gone. No, thank you. Netflix has announced that they're actually firing a bunch of people, and they're not going to be censoring and banning for content kind of stuff anymore. Double-edged sword there, but hey, at least they're not letting the woke people run let the crazies run the asylum. You have school board victories all over the country where you have parents who have stood up. They showed up to school board meetings thinking these are good people if we just make them aware. And then the school board turned on them and they said, okay, well, forget that. And so you have people running, and there's just a wave of people taking over, winning in school board elections that are saying, no, we're not going to let you teach racial division to our kids. No, we believe in racial equality, not this critical race theory nonsense. No, we're not going to let you teach sexual issues to our little children. That's not your job. You don't get to indoctrinate with this. And so you have parents who are outraged, who are standing up, and people who actually believe in racial equality and believe in the innocence of children are winning in school boards across the country. So there's all kinds of wonderful good news that's out there, even amidst all of the craziness. And one bit of good news, I'll end with this story, just kind of a feel-good thing. There was a woman in Florida, I believe, who had some kind of medical incident. I don't know if it was a heart attack or whatever, but she was rendered unconscious or at least immobile while driving. You can see the video. I'll actually post it, where she drifts into the intersection. Whatever's happened, she's gone unconscious, and the car's just rolling into the intersection and headed towards oncoming traffic. Other passengers, other motorists jump out of their cars, run over, actually physically stop the car from rolling. They have to, because the doors are locked, they break the back window to get the doors open to check on the woman, and then they push the car, they call the ambulance and push the car off to the side. And so with all of the craziness that goes on, with all of the, violence and all the screaming and yelling and the way everybody's so angry at everybody all the time over all this stuff that's going on, here's an example of people jumping into action to help a stranger. And so that's amazing, that's caring, that's wonderful. It just shows that there's some good left out there. Let's not lose hope.
That little church on Liberty Hill, come praise the Lord, let your cup be filled. Raise your voices and we'll sing, let God's free